Hello, Vlogalogue. So this week we're talking about home, and it's really interesting to me that that Kevin said that he wanted to do home, but he immediately went to like the city, and he kind of went with hometown more than home. Because when I think of home, I think of the house that I grew up in and all the memories that I have there of playing in the woods outside of our house and just getting into random hijinks with my brothers. And then I remember also when I found out that my parents were selling the house that I grew up in. And it's a weird thing because, like, for some people moved very often when they were children, and I didn't at all. And it wasn't until I was done with high school that my parents actually sold the house that I grew up in. And it felt, in ways, a little bit traumatic to me, in that it was the only home that I knew. Like, how am I supposed to go home to my parents if it's not the place that I grew up in? If it's just, it's going to be where my parents now live. It's a completely different experience than I had previously experienced. And it's not like it was my parents' fault. My dad actually got laid off, and my parents just weren't able to pay for it. And so they had to sell it and buy a new house. I've actually gone by it a couple times just to sort of check it out. I don't know, because I'm weird and nostalgic like that. And it's so weird because the smallest changes, you're just like, what? They cut that tree down? I have so many memories of that tree. And that's an interesting phenomenon, I think. But when it comes to actual hometown, I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, in the United States. And it's a small town. There's only about 100,000 people there. In Green Bay proper. There's a bunch of suburbs. But it's something that's always bothered me, and this is kind of a tangent, but hey, that's what I'm good at. But something that's always bothered me is how people always complain about how there's just nothing to do. Oh, and if only we lived in a bigger, cooler city, then we would have more things to do. But here, everything is so boring. And I get really frustrated with that, because there's always something to do. If you're bored, it's because you are boring, not because of any sort of external factor. If you're bored, it's your own fault, I feel. One of the more interesting memories that I have of home, the house that I grew up in, is when my father was building a deck, and he just had the sort of frame built up, in that he didn't have the top. There was just there's probably a term for it, but I don't know it. The girders, I guess. And he so me and my brothers decided that well, not me and my brothers, I decided that it would be really fun to use it like a balance beam and balance across it. And my brothers, of course, being the younger ones, were immediately like, well, let's go do what our older brother's doing. And so one of my brothers, who some of you may know, went behind me and tried to also balance on the girder raft, or whatever you want to call it. Girders are metal, primarily, right? I don't know what they're called. I'm sure somebody will let me know. But he did not have the balance that his older brother quite had, just because he was younger. And he fell and hurt himself real bad. I don't know if he has a scar or not. I never really thought about it. I'm sure he has something. It'd be like right here. One of the great things with the house that I grew up in is my window faced the road. We lived at like the end of the cul-de-sac. And whenever anybody came home, or even around the road, it always their headlights always went through my bedroom window, so I could see if someone was coming. And my older brother was 11 years older than me, so whenever he came home, I'd have to come up and look. Well, not only that, but I could hear his music like as soon as he turned down the road. But the idea of home is really interesting. I think that maybe it's become more about where my parents live than anything else. Because, I mean, I could call this place home, but I mean, is it really? I mean, it's just home because all my stuff is here. If my stuff wasn't here, then it wouldn't be home. I'd just be squatting. So it's interesting to think about that. What the word home actually means. Is it just because your stuff is there? Is it where you sleep? Unfortunately, that's all that I actually have time for. So I will see you guys next week. And I look forward to next week's topic. We've had a couple good ones lately. It's been nice.